This is PNC Roundtable.
Hello, this is Ric DeVore, Regional President for PNC Bank, and thank you for listening to PNC Roundtable. It's on this show that we tackle some of the region's tough issues with people who make a difference.
Now here's the PNC Roundtable.
Welcome in to the PNC Roundtable. I'm Paul W. Smith, along with Regional President Ric DeVore. And what an interesting guest we bring to the table today. Named a 2005 MacArthur Fellow, former member of the Obama National Arts Policy Committee and President Obama's first appointment to the National Council on the Arts. He's the founder and president of the Sphinx Organization, the leading national arts organization that focuses on youth development and diversity in classical music. He's an author, social entrepreneur, artist citizen with an avid youth education advocate, too, receiving extensive national recognition for his vast accomplishments. His memoir is called Uncommon Rhythm, A Black, White, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Irish Catholic Adoptee's Journey to Leadership, recently released through Aquarius Press. He's been on the Today Show, Nightly News with Brian Williams, People Magazine, CNN. I'm trying to think here, really, Rick, what in the world is Aaron P. Dworkin doing with us?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know. How did we get this thing going on here? Aaron, it's nice to meet you, and God bless you.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Tell us about the Sphinx, how that whole came about, the Sphinx Organization.
Yeah, well, I'm a biracial violinist and played the violin my whole life. And when I was working on my degrees at the University of Michigan, I went into a lesson one day, and my teacher said, would you like to play some music by black composers or composers of color? And I was kind of astonished because my whole life growing up, I wasn't aware that there were any black classical composers. And so he kind of smiles and he starts pulling these amazing works off of his shelf, and it opened up my mind to all of this music that I didn't even know existed.
Well, and I'm afraid many of us didn't know it existed. And why do you think that is? Why? What would you attribute the lack of diversity or lack of knowledge of diversity in the field of the performing arts and specifically, though, classical music?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a function of a number of things. Of course, there has been, at certain points in history, either a marginalization or a purposeful exclusion of some of the works by composers of color, and also there has just been a history where classical music, especially, has not taken hold in communities of color in the way that certain other music genres have. But one of the things that we do at Sphinx, and just I personally, is we really only look kind of to the past to say, is there something there that can help inform us of how to fix the problem or how to be able to build the breadth of diversity of the repertoire in classical music that we hear in America? And so we look to say, okay, well, what can we do? And of course, the first thing we can do is discover these works, because there's great music, but there's also some bad music too, as with everything written by composers of color. And then when we find these great works, how can we showcase them? How can we bring them to broader audiences?
There is an issue of access, and here's something that maybe, Rick, you have already discussed with Aaron, because of the issues that relate to programming and efforts in diversity, access being a part of that. You'd love, if you haven't already heard the story, our Cornerstone Schools, for example, which you're a big supporter of, Rick. The Cornerstone Schools gives every child at a certain age a violin. I'd never heard of such a thing until I heard that. But how cool is that? And talk about access. It's just wonderful.
It's huge. And, I was very lucky at the age of 5 to be able to be exposed to the violin and have the opportunity to learn and perform on it. But far, far too many young people simply never have that opportunity. One of the things I talk about is that it would be very difficult for Motown to, if you will, repeat itself today, because at that time, so many young students in the Detroit public schools were immersed in music and were training in music. There was this vast pool of incredibly talented young people who didn't just have access and exposure, but had the ability to actually train and develop their craft, whether it be in voice or instruments, etc. And unfortunately now so much of that has been cut. And every opportunity that we have to increase the opportunity for young people to be able to not just be exposed to, but study instruments at a young age transforms their life.
And Rick, this plays right into the DNA of PNC.
Well, it really does. When you think about our early childhood program, it's math, science, and the arts. We talk about this a lot because the arts seem to be the first thing on the chopping block when we have budget constraints. Getting back to your point you made earlier. And then if that exposure doesn't happen at an early age, I'm afraid that then sometimes it just never catches on. When you think about what you just said about Cornerstone, that's why that's so powerful. Not only just to learn how to play, but the exposure as well. And I think that's similar to the DSO going, in effect, on the road, if you will. I mean, many of their performances are not at Symphony Hall, which I think is another aspect of giving back to the community and exposure.
It's in a sense, the natural progression of realizing that they weren't always getting people coming to the music hall, and so all right, we'll take it out to the people. And once you expose people to it, as you know, Aaron, once they understand it and aren't afraid of it, boy, this opens up the floodgates in many ways.
Absolutely, and what it takes is it takes actions, and it takes a kind of strength and an interest in one's community, and then of course the core partners to make that happen. And whether, of course, it's partnerships like we have with PNC or with the Detroit Symphony is one of the most proactive orchestras that we have in the country. It's one of the reasons Sphinx is so proud to be based out of Detroit. We have just an incredible community here, and the Detroit Symphony has a minority fellowship program and these other programs that don't just talk about the ideas of diversity, but specifically do things to engage new audiences and to help train the next generation of American classical musicians and orchestras.
Aaron P. Dworkin here. He's the founder and president of the Sphinx Organization. Aaron, give us a bit of the evolution that brought Sphinx to this grassroots educational plan.
Well, it was interesting. I was actually still a student when I founded the organization, and a lot of people actually said, well, Aaron, what you're going to try to do is develop this competition, because that's all it was at that time for me. It was the idea of, what if there was a competition for students like me, and we could come together, meet our peer group from around the country, perform music by composers of color, and gain resources so we could develop professional careers. And if we just did that, it would solve this whole underrepresentation problem in classical music, and the world would at least be a little bit of a better place. And then when I really delved into it, I found that it was a much, much more complex problem, and that there had been some people and some organizations that for decades had really tried to tackle it and had not been successful, at least not in a sustainable way. And so that's what very rapidly led to the idea that this could not just be a competition. That was a good starting point, a great showcase, but that we had to go deeper. We had to develop early music educational programs, like our Overture program here in Detroit, where we are putting instruments in the hands of students for the very first time, a core part of our partnership with PNC. And various other programs that literally take a student from putting the instrument in the hands for the first time to the development of audiences, and not just locally but nationally as well.
This is part of your success. This is a good part of your success, and some of the positive trends that you can map out now in what's been going on. It's fabulous, and it's great for PNC to make that possible. I didn't miss that part of it. Obviously, you're underwriting some of this, so that they can do these things, which are so very valuable. Look, we certainly know of performers of color, but we certainly don't know a lot about composers of color.
You're absolutely right.
And I still don't, even with this work that you're doing. And so this is vitally important.
It really is. And I got a chance to meet Aaron 1 year ago. We had some of the young performers actually perform at our main office in Troy, and part of Black History Month, and we were honoring Dr. Johnson, which is, as you know Shekinah Johnson, formerly from the DPS Foundation on this program, and now over at Wayne State. And so we honored Arthur, a big part of Wayne State, and so forth. And I think Sean Wilson got thinking, hey, maybe we could do something again this year for Black History Month. And this is kind of unique what we're doing, and we're pretty excited about it.
Well, it is exciting, and I'm glad this has been an ongoing relationship. It's been over a year, and I suspect it's going to continue. I'm trying to do some work for you here, Aaron.
Sounds great.
I understand you're signing up for another couple of years here. What do you say, Ric?
Sounds like a 5-year commitment.
Ooh, that's even better.
He went right there. 5th anniversary of the show, 5 years.
Yeah, that's right. We're in the anniversary phase. That's right. We've got to have an anniversary show coming up. We just had the anniversary of the 100th anniversary of the birth of Rosa Parks. And it was a big celebration in Detroit and around the country and around the world. And still to see the pictures that came up and when Nelson Mandela came to Detroit and ran by all the dignitaries that were there to greet him. And it was as if he was seeing a rock star. Rosa Parks! Rosa Parks! Rosa Parks! We had the pleasure and privilege of having her on the show, interviewing her in the past, and hearing and seeing all of the things that what she did meant. But being able to go out to the Henry Ford, for example, and sit on the very bus, and in the seat that she sat in, where she just didn't get up. She wasn't going to get up anymore and give up her seat, and what that started. And there's all of this history all around us. And I know that Sphinx embraces the arts beyond classical music and working with these, especially young people. And we talked a bit about Overture, but tell me a little bit about some of these other ways that the Sphinx embraces the arts beyond classical music.
Definitely. Well, one of the things we actually have coming up here in February is 2 major events. One is the culmination of our national competition for young Black and Latino string players. And so on Sunday, February 17th at 2 p.m. at Orchestra Hall, we will have the final concert where our top 3 laureates, the top 3 young musicians of color from around the country, will be competing for the $10,000 first place prize, performing with the Sphinx Symphony, which is the professional all Black and Latino orchestra that we assemble from around the country. So to have all of these amazing musicians here in Detroit is just incredibly exciting, and leading arts administrators and agents and managers from around the country come here to Detroit to hear the top young talent, to engage, whether it be in their music schools, in their summer programs, in their orchestra, or other professional programs. And then separate from that, we're doing the first national convening on diversity in the performing arts, SphinxCon. That will be going from February 15th through the 17th. And with this program, this is really the first time that we can gather leaders from around the country to have discourse on this critically important issue, and which is really trying to carry on the legacy of Rosa Parks and so many others who brought about key changes in our society. And unfortunately, the performing arts is an area where we have not achieved the distance or traveled the distance that we feel we need to if we're really going to reflect society and the heartbeat of our nation through our performing arts.
Is the significance of SphinxCon, Aaron, that this hasn't been done?
I would say it goes deeper than that, in that, yes, this is unfortunately the first time, but how we're doing it we think is really important. It's going to be a dynamic format. We have about 35 speakers from all over the country coming in, and our goal is not to prescribe and say, this is what diversity should mean to you, and here is what you should do, and here are your action steps and your best practices, but rather to say this is a dialogue, this is a conversation. The con in SphinxCon doesn't refer to conference, it refers to the fact that we're beginning the conversation about these issues, and so we expect debate, we expect to challenge each other's ideas, but that from that what will come out are new relationships, new networks, and a new energy and commitment to do something about this critically important aspect of our art forms.
Is this where the Sphinx Stars comes in?
So that is another initiative of ours that we're very excited about, and will culminate in May at Music Hall. And everyone has been very excited about our national competition, but there have been a number of young people locally who either have been unable to because the national competition just has so many competitors from every state around the country. And so we have a local Southeast Michigan competition, which is Sphinx Stars. And so this is open to all young people under the age of 18, all instruments, all music categories. It just has to be individual and acoustic. And so that's going to be very exciting, and we'll have the finals in May at Music Hall.
How do people get more information about all these projects? What's the website?
Yep, everyone can just go to www.sphinxmusic.org and you can see all of our programs there. You can also either come to our website or to the DSO's website for tickets to the finals concert on February 17th. And you can also go directly to SphinxCon.org if you want to still be able to register for the conference, which you still can. And although the finals concert tends to sell out every year, there are still tickets available for the finals concert on the 17th.
Do you see a most cherished? There are probably so many cherished memories from the whole Sphinx idea that you've started. Is there one single most cherished moment so far, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's interesting because if ever that point in time is some distance in the past, then I would be very concerned about the current work that we were doing, and that we're always striving to continue to have an impact, to continue to transform the lives of young people. And so my hope is that we're always doing more and creating these experiences. There have certainly been some highlights. One of our alums, just now a little over a year ago, became the associate principal bass of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Oh, boy.
So that was huge and tremendous. One of our alums, who unfortunately has been, fighting cancer, recently was able to, through Make-A-Wish, be able to perform for the President of the United States, and that was his wish. Was as he looked at the different aspects, I think of his life and of his sense of self, it was his art. And specifically his music, and to be able to share that with the leader of our country was obviously transformative.
Pretty spectacular.
No, that's really, really exciting stuff. And I think the one thing that we haven't talked about, which is really of interest to me as well, is in addition to exposing young people to music, people of color, also just young people in general. If you look at the DSO and their outreach program, it is vitally important because, let's face it, you go to a performance, and I usually bring down the average age. And I think it's so important that we start exposing children, to the arts now. And I think it's pretty clever on DSO's part to do so much outreach in the community. I mean, they're out there. In fact, I think last week, there was 15 performances, and only 3 were at Symphony Hall.
Wow.
And so I think hopefully that'll bear fruit in the future, but I think it's kind of a double win here when you think about really what this organization's doing.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully in many ways the work that they're doing will be a model to other orchestras around the country. We partner with about 30 orchestras around the country, but our partnership with the DSO is not just the deepest, and where you might think kind of by default sharing the same hometown, but the depth and the breadth of the aspects of our partnership are key, and I think that's because we share so many similar values in terms of commitment to young people and of course to our community.
Aaron Dworkin here, the founder of the Sphinx Organization and author, and I read the name of the book from the beginning there, the memoir titled Uncommon Rhythm, A Black, White, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Irish Catholic Adoptee's Journey to Leadership. It's available, easy to find online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you Google it, and you can go to Aquarius's website themselves or Amazon.
And I'm going to ask the second question. I want to come back to this question, but you also have written some poetry, some children's books, some other things. One of the poetry collections entitled "They Said I Wasn't Really Black." That's a fascinating thing as a white man to sit across from. You happen to be a black man. I mean, you're a man of color, as far as I can tell. The mayor over here, Sean, a man of color, and he, I mean, he's a little blacker than you are, and these are not things we necessarily think about, and it's not always comfortable to talk about. But I'm here to talk. And did you really go through that? Are you really black, white, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Irish Catholic?
Absolutely. And so the very
How do you ever get out of bed in the morning?
I make a decision before whether, I'll get up Jewish today or, But no, actually, I was adopted when I was 2 weeks old. I was born in Monticello, New York, and I was adopted when I was 2 weeks old by a white Jewish couple who were from Chicago. Grew up in Manhattan.
God bless them that they gave you a home, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they also already had a birth son, my older brother, who's actually in New York now at Columbia as a biogeneticist. And so I grew up, and it was my adoptive mother who started me on the violin. And then 12 years ago, I was reunited with my birth parents, who were not only together and ended up getting married, but had another child, my full sister. And my birth father is Black Jehovah's Witness, and my birth mother is white Irish Catholic. And so in the end, it brought all of that together, and all of those aspects of who I am and where I come from, both environmentally, if you will, from my adoptive family, and biologically from my birth family, are part of who I am. And there's an interest on the part of all of them to make sure that there's a sense of identity for me that connects with all of those aspects, without which I wouldn't be here, and my life wouldn't be what it is.
I must tell you, I can't wait to get the book. Seriously, it's called Uncommon Rhythm, a Black, White, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Irish Catholic adoptee's journey to leadership, and Aquarius Press, the publisher. Fascinating road that you've taken.
Yeah, and you mentioned the poetry, which I weave some of the poetry throughout the book. And they said I wasn't really black, which was the title poem from the book of poetry, really came about, especially when I was 10 years old. I moved from Manhattan to Hershey, Pennsylvania, which was a drastic
You might have been
change.
the first Black, White, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Irish Catholic in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and they're still talking about you.
Absolutely, and I was certainly less than a handful of any African Americans in my school district. And Big Afro playing the violin, it was quite. It drew me much closer to my art.
Did you have a big afro?
Big old afro.
Did Mom suggest?
Yeah, played the
or
violin.
Did you just do it? I mean, did you do it on your own, or did Mom say, "Hey, that's what you want to do"?
I'm convinced that somehow they felt, it was character building for me, because they forced me to have an afro. They would not let me cut my hair. So,
you've kept the eyebrows now, at least.
Right? Yes.
You got great eyebrows.
Now I think in some kind of adult rebellion, I just shave my head. So
Link Besser's here. What rebellion are you in, Link, with shaving your head? Sean, I just noticed you're shaving your head too.
I tell you,
Rick, it's up to us, Rick.
I don't think it'd be a good look on me.
You've got the best head of hair left. I had hair, and my hair's growing back, way back. So there it is. Aaron, it's a unique privilege and pleasure meeting you. I can't believe I haven't met you until now, and God bless you, Ric DeVore and PNC Bank, for bringing this whole group together and to our attention.
Well, it's a red letter day for me that I've actually introduced somebody to you versus you introducing somebody to me, right?
Well,
I think that must be something about the 5th anniversary, because I think that's the first time that may have happened. But with that said, obviously you started your career, Aaron, at Penn State and transferred to University of Michigan.
Well, there's all kinds of connections going on here.
Ken Fisher, a good friend of the bank with the University Music Society, and also somebody that we support through our foundation, is near and dear, I know, to your heart. And,
my biggest mentor.
And so we'll be seeing him here in a couple of weeks as well.
Excellent.
And, so it's quite a connection. Paul went to University of Michigan as well, so
right.
He's a little biased like I am. And
yep.
Right now, Sean's having acid reflux right now. Yeah. He's listening to this.
I worked in Philadelphia for 6 years, 6 lovely years.
Oh.
I never expected to be there, but did, and was happy to be there. So there's all kinds of connections. We're all connected, It's
absolutely.
hard to... we're all connected in so many ways. We have all the same desires for our children, for ourselves, for our families. We are one people. We just have to remind ourselves from time to time. Where do you see Sphinx's efforts and mission, say, 5 years from now, Aaron?
It's another great question. And also just to share, too, that I absolutely just loved my time in Pennsylvania. And while it was tough initially in Hershey...
Listen, it was tough for me in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And it was pointed out to me that Philadelphians don't like outsiders. And I go, well, this is great. Why did you hire me? I mean, I'm an outsider. I'm from Monroe, Michigan, by way of, was in New York City at the time they hired me. And he goes, they're not going to like that you're a New Yorker. I'm not a New Yorker. I just worked in New York for 5 years. I'm a Michigander. That didn't help. But they don't open their arms readily. But once they embrace you, you don't want to leave.
Absolutely. No, it was tremendous. In my time at Penn State, I had the opportunity to serve as concertmaster of the Penn State Philharmonic, and also one of the early orchestras that I really saw and fell in love with was the Pittsburgh Symphony, and they have done some actually amazing work with diversity and in really developing some fantastic initiatives. And it's interesting, diversity in so many ways has really taken hold in Pittsburgh, and with football, and the Steelers are one of the most proactive football teams in terms of diversity.
You mentioned the Pittsburgh Orchestra. A late dear friend of mine who was only two of the many things you are. He was white and Jewish. Marvin Hamlish was there, and God bless him. And he loved it there. He used to regale me with great stories of the orchestra.
Yeah.
Now, he did the pop series there, which we subscribed to before we relocated home here.
Right.
And you talk about Pittsburgh and diversity, and really the founder of the Rooney Rule is Art Rooney and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they've really led the way in terms of diversity and making sure people have to interview a person of color for a coaching job. And I actually we're practicing the Rooney Rule at PNC, quite frankly.
Really?
And making sure that we have a female and a person of color when we interview candidates, because really when you think about diversity, we need to get our customer and our employee base to match our employee base to match our customer base, and I think we'll be more successful when we do that. So it's a big issue for us, and one we take real serious, and we're in fact right now have another initiative regarding that. You think about diversity in this region, there's 360,000 Arab Americans in this region. We have obviously Southwest Detroit, a large Latino segment. I mean, one of the things that makes Detroit, I think, really unique is the diversity. Mm-hmm. Yet with that said, we still need to do a better job of working together, if you will.
Look, we see that with our own Detroit City Council. You guys don't have to say anything, and you don't need to be political, but everything anybody tries to do takes on a racial tint or taint in this case, and that's just wrong. When the governor steps up and says he wants to help with Belle Isle, take $6 million off the back of the city and turn it into a state park and make it better and fix it up and not take it away from the folks, it becomes a racial issue. If you watch the meetings, you see the news, you hear the reports, and it's ridiculous. We have got to get past that, or we will never get anywhere as a city, for that matter, as a state or a country. But that aside, I'll get off my soapbox for just a moment. Is there a single piece of advice that you'd like to share with our PNC Roundtable listeners here on WJR.com, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that as I look at kind of the arc of Sphinx and the work that we're able to do, to me, I think that there's a combination of a few things, but one is passion for whatever it is that connects with you in life, and that once you find whatever that passion might be, being persistent in terms of the pursuit of making a difference in it. It was something that was instilled in me at a very early age. I was having a conversation with my father, and he said, Aaron, unfortunately, when you walk into a room, because of your physical appearance, there are people in this world who will make assumptions about you. And may act in certain ways that limit your opportunities for no other reason than your appearance, as in the color of your skin. And he said, but if you excel and you are the best at whatever it is that you do, you will minimize that to an extent that will not be able to happen. And not only will that affect you, it will empower other people. And so I think the only way, from my perspective, to work that hard, because it takes a lot of work, is that you have to feel passionately about whatever it is that you do. And if you combine those two things, I think it can lead to not only a very rewarding life, but one in which you can really transform other people's lives as well.
Wonderful words. Hard to add anything to that. I do have a question. As an adoptive parent, and I don't even know if that's what I'm called, I adopted my son, and I was the first thing I thought of, sadly, but realistically, is when you said, when I spoke to my father, and you told me earlier that you've met now your birth parents. Who are you referring to? I want to know.
Right. So this was my adoptive father.
Okay.
This is when I was very young. Yeah.
Okay,
so, but it was actually very interesting, and I actually had to think about it for a while. Talked with my wife actually when I was reunited with my birth parents, because I was faced with that question. What? Because there was always just mom and dad, and
right.
Now all of a sudden, what do I
it's
do?
Mom and dad.
Yes, and so I actually just started. I used geography, so it was Hershey mom and and New York mom. So figured that was Hershey dad, New York dad. So.
And
that's a good way to do it.
You're in good touch with all of them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's a wonderful story. Were you on a mission to find them, or?
I actually had been, is
there a book in this?
Right. Well, I talk about this in my book, and so it was a little tough in Hershey, the big afro playing the violin and all of that, and so as a kind of a result of that, I definitely kind of had a bit of a rebellion period, and so I started searching really when I was about 15 years old.
And when you found them, how old were you when you found them?
I was 30.
Oh, 15-year search.
Yes.
And what was their reaction to what their son, that they had to, for whatever long reasons that are in the book, I'm sure, that they had to walk away? What was their reaction to this violin-playing, white, Catholic, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, black kid? I mean, what was their reaction?
He's still working on
That's
that.
Right. I know. It is. It's so funny because you say it's in the book, but but no, it was.
I'm going to read the book. Right. I gotta know.
No, it was really transformative. Because it was simply the kind of experience that the arts are for. I really, even though I write about it, you cannot capture that kind of experience in words alone. For all of us. And just to give you one kind of snippet that was just amazing is that my birth father, my New York dad, when he was young, he played, and he had organized a band that they referred to as a mixed band, and they would play in the colored section of town and the white section of town.
Wow.
Because they wanted to try to bring people together with their music and to keep kids off the streets as well. And so when they learned about the work that I was doing with Sphinx, it just resonated. And even though we hadn't seen each other since I was 2 weeks old, there was this sense of instant connection.
And pride.
Yeah.
And pride. Because I got to believe in all the things that they wondered about when they would lay in bed and say, what happened to our boy? They didn't picture you with that violin, I'm guessing.
I don't think so. I didn't think so. But it's been amazing and just an incredible blessing for me to be able to share my life with them as well now.
Beautiful. Uncommon Rhythm, a black, white, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Irish Catholic adoptee's journey to leadership. Aquarius Press. And now, boss, I'm going to give you the final word. Regional President Ric DeVore, the reason we're able to have this PNC Roundtable.
Well, we're excited to be sponsoring, this month, Black History Month. And I will say that it's ironic, and I don't know if this is in the book because I too have not read it yet, but it's ironic that you grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, because the people that founded Hershey had no children. And so the stock to this day, or the holdings of the family, are in the foundation for children.
No kidding.
So if you think about the irony of this, and as you know, or maybe you don't know, Paul, we're a significant bank in Hershey. I know it surprises you, but we're everywhere, in Pennsylvania especially. But I found it ironic listening to Aaron's words that that's the history of the Hershey family, is they were not able to have children, and so they put all their assets in this foundation, which today still exists to this day.
Wow.
And and that's why there's a Hershey Park, an amusement park and so forth, and it's kind of interesting. So if you think of full circle in your journey, it's kind of ironic that started or it passed through Hershey anyway. I find that ironic.
And fabulously appropriate.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Aaron P. Dworkin, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We appreciate it. And I've got a couple of different websites, sphinxmusic.org, Sphinx Stars, SphinxCon.org. Am I missing any?
I think that does it. I think that
people will be able to find you, that's for sure.
Definitely.
And we found you thanks to PNC and our regional president and co-host, Ric DeVore. And we thank you again for being with us on the PNC Roundtable. I'll be talking to you in the mornings from 5:30 till 9 at News Talk 760 WJR. Regards, Paul W. Smith.